Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Podcast. Today's guest is somebody that covers horse racing for Horse Racing Nation and the Daily Gallop to talk all things Kentucky Derby. Jeffrey Byrnes, how are you?
I'm doing good, Madison. How are you?
I'm good. All right, we're gonna go through the field of horses. We're gonna talk about the horse that was scratched at Omaha Beach later on, and we'll do predictions at the end of this. All right?
All right, sounds good.
All right. So, the posts came out a few days ago, and all the odds came out for the horses. We're just going to go through the order of the posting, 2 through 20. There's the one that's not there. So, we're going to go 2 through 20. You're going to give me a description of all the horses and just a mini description and things that some of the horses that you know of have done. The number 2 horse in the race is War of Will. He's 15-1 to win the Derby. What do you know about War of Will?
War of Will, this is a very interesting horse. First off, he started off his career on the turf course as a 2-year-old. He wasn't winning, but he was finding some moderate success. He actually ran in the Breeders' Cup at Churchill last November, and despite he had some success on the turf, but however, he didn't win. So the Connections decided to try him on the dirt for the very first time. And on November 24th of last year, he actually broke his maiden, or he won his first race. He broke it at Churchill on a very sloppy racetrack, which could come into play tomorrow, considering there is rain possibly in the forecast. And going into his 3-year-old year, they took him to Louisiana, and he found more success on the dirt, winning 2 stakes races in a row. Now, he was the overwhelming favorite in the Louisiana Derby, March 23rd at the fairgrounds. But he stumbled really badly at the gate and actually came out of the race with an injury. He did not run well that day, but he came out of the race with an injury. But the injury healed up very quickly, and he's actually been working very well in the morning. So while he has had some moderate success in his career, he primarily has run better on the dirt than he has on the turf. Now, if looking at War of Will, he has a little bit of history against him. Saddlecloth number 1, which is what he will be wearing, has not won the Kentucky Derby since 1986, going all the way back to a horse named Ferdinand. So he has a little bit of history against him. This horse is more of like a press-the-pace kind of horse, so when he breaks out of the gate, he really is not going to have a lot of margin for error. He's going to have to go right from the start. So I won't be surprised if that's the game plan for him, and he'll likely end up being between on the lead or somewhere in the top 5 early in the going. Even though I think he's a talented horse, but at the end of the day, it's going to be very tough to overcome that inside trip.
Yeah, the next horse up is the number 3 horse, Tax, who is 20-1 to win the race. What do you know about Tax?
Well, Madison, if you and me on October 21st, 2018, went to Keeneland Racecourse, we could have claimed Tax for $35,000. So this horse was up for a bargain, and he was claimed by his current trainer, Danny Gargan, who really has done a tremendous job with him. Since claiming him for $35,000, he has not finished outside the top 3, and even has the greatest stakes win in the Withers Stakes at Aqueduct back in February. Now, after the Withers, he took about a month and a half off and came back in the Wood Memorial, and he finished second in that race, but he was well clear of the third-place horse. He was second behind Tacticus, who we'll get to in a little bit. But since the Wood Memorial, he's come out of it very well. He's been training very well in the mornings. This will be Danny Gargan's first ever Kentucky Derby runner, so I'm sure he'll be very excited, win or lose. His pedigree suggests that 1.25 miles should be no problem for him at all. I think this is the horse who is definitely going to be stalking the pace. He'll likely be somewhere in the top 10 early in the going, and he'll be coming late. Biggest problem with him, again, is the inside post. He's going to have to work out a good trip. But if he can get to the outside and clear, he'll definitely be coming late.
Yeah, so that should be an interesting one. And then 4 is... I'm sorry, 4, my bad. By My Standards, who's 15-1 like War of Will. Tell me about By My Standards.
By My Standards, this is a horse who has never finished outside the top 3, but it took him 4 races to break his maiden or win his first race. But since breaking his maiden, the Connections really threw him to the wolves and ran him in the Louisiana Derby, his very next race, and he pulled off a 23-1 upset in that race. He beat a horse in there named Spinoff, who's also in the Derby, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But he has trained really well since coming out of the Louisiana Derby. He's very familiar with the Churchill Downs surface. He actually ran his first ever race at Churchill. And the trainer also, Brett Calhoun, very familiar with Churchill, very popular trainer down there. My biggest concern with By My Standards is his pedigree. He's a colt by a horse named Golden Fence. Golden Fence was a horse who primarily did his best running at the 1 mile distance. And this race is obviously going 1.25 miles. The farthest Golden Fence ever won was at the 1.125 mile distance in the Santa Anita Derby in 2013. And if you look also at the bottom side of his pedigree, it really doesn't show a lot of stamina there either. So while I think by my standards, he continues to get better. I think he's a very talented horse. I have a lot of reservations about the pedigree and whether he can actually get the 1.25 mile distance.
Yeah, so those are interesting points about By My Standards. One of the long shots in the field's a number 5 horse, and that is Gray Magician, who is 50-1. Do you know anything about Gray Magician that's interesting?
This horse to me is my first automatic toss. I consider Gray Magician I appreciate the connections for taking the step and running him in the Derby, but this is a horse who really it took him a long time to really get going. He couldn't. He only has 1 win in 6 career starts. Then the connections in California. Then the connections decided to ship it to Maryland to try to get him a stakes win out there, and he couldn't do it there. And then they took one last shot at the Kentucky Derby by sending him all the way to Dubai to run in the UAE Derby. And he actually ran a really surprising race as a long shot to finish second, and that's how he got the points to qualify for the Kentucky Derby. But, he's an impressive horse in the mornings, but in the afternoons, he really has not shown it. And if he can't beat, simple horses in the United States, I don't see how he can do it in the Kentucky Derby, so he's a toss for me.
Yeah, some of those long shots don't normally come out very much, but the stories that they get to the Derby are interesting. One of the favorites is the number 6 horse, and that is Improbable with 5-1 odds. What do you know about Improbable?
This is the first of the 3 Bob Baffert horses. Obviously, Bob Baffert has trained in 2 of the last Triple Crown winners. He is coming in here basically with Team Justified. Justify, of course, won the Triple Crown last year. Same owner, same trainer, but different jockey. This is a horse who went 3 for 3 as a 2-year-old, including a stakes win at Churchill Downs on Breeders' Cup Day on November 2nd. So he is very familiar with the Churchill Downs track. He won a Grade 1 race immediately after that race at Churchill. However, as a 3-year-old, he's had 2 starts and 2 second-place finishes. One of the second-place finishes was his first start, which was behind a horse named Long Range Toddy, who is also running in the Derby. We'll get to him in a little bit. But he went wide the whole way, and he actually finished second, being the net. In his next start after that, he ran against Omaha Beach, and the connections decided to put blinkers on him to help him focus more, and it did not work, to say the least. So he came out of that race okay. He's been training very well in the morning. However, even though he hasn't won a race this year, this horse I think absolutely should be considered for your wagers. Not only does he have a win at Churchill, he's got the looks, he's got the pedigree. I think pedigree-wise, he can absolutely handle 1.25 miles. He definitely has the stamina. Bob Baffert, the trainer. He's got a very good inside post. He's got post position number 6. However, he's saddle cloth number 5. The number 5 has won 2 of the last 5 Kentucky Derbies, so it's a very popular number. I think this horse has all the looks, and I think he's absolutely worth considering in your wagers.
Yes, he's a good bet. I agree with you there. The number 7 horse is Velcoma, who, like War of Will and By My Standards, is 15-1 to win the race. What do you know about Velcoma?
Velcoma I think this is another horse who should be absolutely considered in your wagers. He broke his maiden very impressively at Belmont Park last fall. He won his first Greatest Stakes win his very next start. However, after he won the Nassau Stakes at Aqueduct, but after that, we did not see him again until all the way in March, where he was 3rd in the Fountain of Youth at Gulfstream Park. Now, he needed that race to really get his 3-year-old year going, because of his very next start, he won the Toyota Bluegrass Stakes at Keeneland in very impressive fashion. Now, if you go back and you watch the replay of that race, he has this like funky looking stride coming down the stretch, and you look at it like, what in the world's going on there? But I can tell you that it's definitely that's how the style he runs. But he's definitely been impressive in his young career so far. Pedigree-wise, he definitely can handle the mile and a quarter on the top side. My only concern, however, is the bottom side of his pedigree. He's a colt out of a horse named Mona de Mama, who was a Grade 1 winner. However, that Grade 1 came at the 7-furlong distance. She was primarily known as a sprinter in her career. So while the top side could be good, the bottom side is a little bit of a question mark. He'll be on the pace without for sure. He's been on the pace almost for his entire career. I think this horse, however, if you look at his running style, his coat position, and just the connections training him, I think he absolutely should be considered in your wagers.
Yeah, if there was a double-digit choice to win the race, that sounds like one of the better double-digit picks there. Number 8 is Maximum Security, who's 8-1 to win the race. What do you know about Maximum Security?
Well, remember I told you that if you and me went to Keeneland, we can claim tax for $35,000. Well, on December 20th of last year, we could have went to Gulfstream and claimed Maximum Security for $16,000. Now, this horse has slowly but surely been rising through the ranks. He started off in Maine Claiming Company at the sprinting distance, and he has increased his distance with every start. He was relatively an unknown going into the Florida Derby, and the connections knew that he was likely going to be one of the pace setters. However, the Florida Derby, we were left with more questions than answers because he was supposed to be challenged on the front end by a horse named Hidden Scroll, who was supposed to be another one of the pace setters, but he decided to lay off and actually let Maximum Security go. He set slow fractions that day, and he won on the romp. In fact, we left more questions because the 1-2 finishers in the Florida Derby were 1-2 all the way around the racetrack. I don't think Maximum Security is going to get that kind of pace again. I think he's going to get a lot more pressure this time in the Derby. And I think he still has a lot of question marks because this is really, we don't know how he's going to handle such a giant crowd that's projected to be at Churchill Saturday. Also the fact that we don't know what he's like when he's pressured on the lead. Now, the biggest positive I can see from him is he hasn't lost a race yet. I think pedigree-wise, he can handle the distance. But there's a lot of negatives I see in Maximum Security. So, very difficult call. If you want to use them in your exotics, go ahead. But in my opinion, I think I would stay away.
Interesting. All right. Number 9 is Tacitus. Has the same odds as Maximum Security at 8-1. Tell us about Tacitus.
I think this horse is very dangerous, Tacitus. Primarily because pedigree-wise, he can absolutely handle the mile and a quarter distance. He broke his maiden first time out at Aqueduct on November 10th. He was given a long layup afterwards. After that race in November, we did not see him again until March 9th of this year, where he ran in the Tampa Bay Derby, and he actually came just a quarter off the track record when he won that race that day. And he came back in the Wood Memorial at Aqueduct a month later. And really, if you went back and watched that race, it was more of a bumper car race. A lot of horses were taken down in the first turn. He was one of them, and he survived that. And not only did that, but he and Tax dueled down the stretch, and he came out of the better of the two. And those two were well clear of the other horse in the field. This horse, to me, seems like he's getting better with every start. He has one of the best jockeys in the business in Jose Ortiz, a great trainer in Bill Mott. Thing about his pedigree is this. He's a colt by a horse named Tappet. Tappet has sired 3 Belmont Stakes winners in the last 5 years. The Belmont Stakes is actually longer than the Kentucky Derby. So at least top side of the pedigree, he can absolutely handle the mile and a quarter distance. And he is the very first foal out of a mare named Close Hatches. Close Hatches was a Greatest Stakes winner, a 7-time Greatest Stakes winner in races longer than a mile and a 16th. So I think pedigree-wise, he is absolutely bred to go this distance. I think he's going to get the pace he needs. He has a great coat position. I think he's absolutely a must-use in your exotics.
Yeah, you seem higher on Tacitus than Maximum Security, so it's interesting that Vegas has them as the same odds to win the Derby. Next
One
up...
thing I will say tack at this.
Go ahead.
I won't be surprised if he does go off at like around maybe like 5-1. I think he will get play at post time.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me either. Number 10 is Plus Q Parfait, who's 30-1. Do you know anything about that horse?
This horse actually is pronounced Plus Q Parfait.
Parfait.
It's actually a French term for more than perfect. So, a little fun fact there. In order to win the Kentucky Derby, Plus Q Parfait is going to have to be a lot more than Plus Q Parfait. So, he actually ran pretty well as a 2-year-old. He actually started twice at Churchill Downs. He had a third-place finish in a maiden race, and then after breaking his maiden in Keeneland, he actually finished second, beating the net on a sloppy racetrack in the Kentucky Jockey Club Stakes. So he's actually run well over the Churchill surface. The thing that's throwing a lot of people off with him was the start to his 3-year-old year was really disastrous. He was 5th in the race called the Lecomte Stakes, and then was 13th in the Risen Star Stakes. Did not run well in those races at all. And then the connections, like Grey Magician, took a Hail Mary and decided to send him all the way to Dubai to run at the UAE Derby. And Placu Parfait actually ran outstanding in that race and won. And that's how he got the points he needed to qualify for the Kentucky Derby. I don't think I'm going to use him in my wagers, but I won't be surprised if this horse runs better than people expect him to. I think he is, the pace he'll likely get, I think he could be a long shot that get somewhere a top 10 finish.
Okay, how about Cutting Humor, who's also 30-1? He is the 11 horse.
Cutting Humor, actually, there was a little breaking news this morning. Mike Smith, who was supposed to be the jockey on Omaha Beach before he scratched, is now the new rider for Cutting Humor. So I think that 30-1 is going to go down a lot. Because we'll be very surprised how jockeys can actually affect wagering. And Mike Smith, in my opinion, is probably the best in the business when it comes to greatest stakes races like this. So a little breaking news on Cutting Humor is there. This horse, it took him a little while to get going. He didn't break his maiden until his third career start. And then he was, the next race right after that, he was second in an allowance race where there were horses in there that I think are going to be great stakes winners in the not-too-distant future. He disappointed in a race at Oakland Park, and then the connection sent him all the way to New Mexico to run on the Sumner Park Derby, and not only did he win that race, but he broke the track record, too. He's been turning very fast workouts in the morning. I think now with the addition of Mike Smith, I think he's going to be a little bit less than the wagering. I'm not saying he's going to be like less than 10-1. I hope he's not less than 10-1. But I think this horse is going to get a little bit more play now. Pedigree concerns me a little bit because his sire is a horse named First Samurai, who's, to this point in his stallion career, has been no more for sprinters and milers than like long-distance horses who can travel at like the mile and a quarter. So Cutting Humor, for me, I think is a no-go.
Okay, how about Code of Honor, currently 12-1 to win the race? What do you know about Code of Honor?
This is another horse I'm definitely considering using in my wagers. This is a horse who finally, starting this year, got to go 2 turns. He was supposed to run in the Breeders' Cup last year, but got sick a couple of days before the race, and he was forced to scratch. Now, earlier this year, he got his year started in January, ran a pretty disappointing 4th in a race called the Mucho Macho Man Stakes, but then he was given a month off and came back in the Fountain of Youth Stakes and actually won that race. That was going 2 turns for the very first time. And in that race, he actually beat Tacoma, who came back to win the Bluegrass Stakes his very next start. So that was a very live race. He also ran in the Florida Derby that year, and he was 3rd behind Maximum Security. But like I said earlier, there were more questions about that race probably than we got answers. Because I feel like with pace, Code of Honor absolutely could have had a better chance than anybody. This horse has been lighting it up in the mornings. He looks like he's taking the Churchill Downs very well. He has a pedigree. I think because there's rain in the forecast, this horse has a pedigree that can absolutely love an off track. And if there was a fast enough pace, he will be coming late. So I think Code of Honor with the connections, John Velasquez opted to ride this horse over Spinoff, who we'll get to in a little bit. So I think that's also a big endorsement for him.
Also, with 12-1 odds, we were talking about Code of Honor just now, the 13 horse, which is Win, Win, Win. What do you know about that horse?
This horse, to me, has a lot of talent. He started off his career in the Mid-Atlantic, in Maryland. He won his first 2 races there. Then they threw him in the Greatest Stakes Company in Florida, and he was third behind Tacitus in the Tampa Bay Derby. And then right after that, he was second behind Vekoma in the Toyota Bluegrass Stakes. Now, in 6 career starts, he has 3 wins, 2 seconds, and a third. So he's never finished off the board in his career. My biggest concern with win is I'm not so sure if he wants to really travel the mile and a quarter distance. I think he's going to have to get like almost big time fractions to really come and flying late. This is a horse who I think has a lot of talent. I think he's more of like going to be like a miler, like mile and an eighth type of horse. So win. I think if there's a very fast pace, I think he can get somewhere maybe in the top 7. But it would be very iffy to see if he gets in the win.
Okay, and the horse that has the long shot odds along with Gray Magician is Master Fencer, who's 50-1. He's the 14 horse. What's his story?
This is probably the biggest unknown of this race. He's 50-1 on the morning line. This is a horse who did all of his running in Japan, and actually this horse is making history today or on Saturday. He will become the first ever Japanese horse or Japanese bred horse to ever run in the Kentucky Derby. So there were 2 horses prior that were Japanese owned that ran in the Derby. Their names were Sky Captain and Lonnie, but they were both born in the United States. So this horse was born, raised in Japan, so he'll be making a little history there. He couldn't even beat horses in Greatest Stakes Company in Japan. I mean, obviously the connections want to take a shot here. He'll be a long shot, but I really just don't see it happening for him. It's great that there's international presence in this field, but at the end of the day, I'm leaving him off my ticket.
Yeah, I'm skeptical about that one too. 15 is the favorite right now at 9-2. Game Winner. Tell us about Game Winner.
Game Winner. This is another. This is the second of the Bob Baffert trained horses. This horse has 4 wins in 2 seconds so far this year. Both those seconds came in 2019. One was in the first division of the Rebel Stakes, and then he was second behind Roadster, who we'll get to in just a few seconds. But this is a horse that went 4 for 4 as a 2-year-old and was the 2-year-old champion in 2018. One of those wins came in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile at Churchill Downs last year, so he's very familiar with the racetrack. This is a horse who will stalk the pace and really absolutely has the pedigree to handle the mile and a quarter distance. I think he'll be right there with the leaders around the half-mile pole, and I think won't be very surprised if he gets the first jump on the field. Joel Rosario, his jockey, a former Kentucky Derby winning jockey, will have the call here. So I think with his looks, his pedigree, he's been training very well in the morning. I think he definitely run well in the Derby on Saturday.
Yeah, I really like Game Winner a lot. And then Roadster is the 16 horse who you just mentioned. 5-1 odds along with Improbable as the second favorites. Tell us about Roadster.
Roadster, this is a very interesting horse, particularly because this horse actually made national headlines last year when TMZ, of all people, approached Bob Baffert and asked him, who's your next, Justified? Who's your next American Pharoah? Who do you think could be among those ranks? And Bob Baffert said Roadster, which was very interesting. He actually now has a nickname. He's known as the TMZ horse, interestingly enough. But this horse broke his maiden in very, very impressive fashion at Del Mar last summer. After he finished third in the Del Mar Futurity, he was given almost 6 months off because he actually had a breathing problem, very similar to Omaha Beach, which is why he was scratched out of the Derby. We'll get to that in a little bit. But he had a very similar breathing problem to Omaha Beach. And when he came back, he has been a completely different racehorse. Baffert sent him in an allowance race, which he won very easily on March 1st. And then in the Santa Anita Derby, he got a good pace up front, and he took over from Game Winner in the stretch to win that race. They got the points he needed to qualify for the Derby. Now, Roadster has a little bit of history going against him because Santa Claus number 17 has never won the Kentucky Derby in the 100-plus year history of the race. So he definitely has a little bit of history going against him. But let's face facts. Bob Baffert is a guy known for breaking history. So I think Roadster absolutely could be used in your exotics. I think he's a very dangerous player. The biggest downside to me with Roadster is Mike Smith, who is now aboard Cunning Humor. He was originally supposed to ride Omaha Beach, but he actually chose Omaha Beach over Roadster, which is a very interesting. I don't know. It's a kind of a not so big endorsement of Roadster, or more of an endorsement for Omaha Beach. But now he gets Florent Giroux. Giroux is definitely one of the biggest riders, best riders in the country. So it's not much of a downgrade at all. So Roadster, I think, absolutely should be considered in your exotics.
Yeah, I really like Roadster, and I'm a big fan of the owner of that horse too. Long Range Toddy is somebody that you mentioned before. He's 30-1. He's the 17 horse. Tell us about him.
Long Range Toddy, this is a horse who actually began his career in Oklahoma, of all places. He went 3 for 4 at Remington Park. He won a race called the Springboard Mile, which is where he got his first points for the Kentucky Derby. The connections then took him to Oaklawn Park, where he was second in the Smarty Jones and third in the Southwest Stakes. And then he scored a 10-1 upset over Improbable in the Rebel Stakes. Now, he has that victory over Improbable, but in his very next start in the Arkansas Derby, he was very disappointing over a sloppy racetrack, and that's a very big concern of it to me, because there is definitely a high chance of the sloppy track coming up on Saturday in the Kentucky Derby, and if he runs the same race he ran in the Arkansas Derby, he's going to have no shot. He has 58-year-old John Court aboard him in the Derby on Saturday. He's been training well in the mornings. He's been doing very well in the afternoons when he's racing career. But if a sloppy track does come up, I have a lot of concerns with him.
Yeah, and then the next one, also with 30-1 odds, is Spinoff. He's the 18 horse. Tell us about Spinoff. I know you mentioned him before.
Spinoff, this is a horse who has really taken a lot of time in between his races. He actually made his career debut in June 2018 and he won that race, but didn't race again until all the way in late August, where he was third in a race called the Saratoga Special. After that race, we didn't see him again until February of this year, where he absolutely freaked in an allowance race at Tampa Bay Downs in Florida. After that race, the Connections decided to take him to Louisiana to run in the Louisiana Derby, and he actually made the lead at the top of the stretch, but was caught at the wire by My Standards, the 3-horse in the Derby. So this horse, to me, he's been training well in the mornings, but the fact that he was caught, he started from the outside post in that race, and now he gets the 19 post, so he's going to have another outside post on Saturday. So that's a big concern for me. Pedigree-wise, he absolutely should have no problem going in the Kentucky Derby. But again, I think the fact that he has a wide draw, he couldn't overcome it in Louisiana. He's going to have another one on Saturday. It's going to be very tough for him to possibly get a good trip and win. So play him if you want, but I don't know if he's for me.
2 more to go. 19 is Country House, also 30-1. Tell us about Country House.
Country House is a very consistent racehorse. He only has one win in his career, but he's never finished outside the top 4 in Greatest Stakes company. He was second behind War of Will in the Risen Star Stakes at the Fairgrounds in February. He ran in the Louisiana Derby and finished 4th that day. Then the Connections brought him back on short rest, and he ran 3rd in the Arkansas Derby, but he was he was 3rd in the Arkansas Derby behind Omaha Beach and Improbable, but he was a very well-beaten distance 3rd in that race. So he has experience over a sloppy racetrack. The pedigree suggests he should handle a sloppy racetrack, and he's going to have a very far outside post. His trainer, Bill Mott, who also trains Tacitus, he said he has no problem with the post position. It's going to be very interesting to see what kind of trip he can work out from that outside post. The biggest thing for him is that he's a closer, so he's going to need a very, very hot pace, I think, to have a shot at this win in the Derby. So it's going to be very tough for him.
Yeah. And last but not least is Bod Express, who's also 30-1. He's in the 20 slot. Tell us about Bod Express.
Bod Express, this is a horse who has never won in his career. Yes, he has 5 starts, 0 wins, 3 seconds, 0 thirds. So we have a maiden running in the Kentucky Derby this year. He wasn't also eligible in this race, but because of the scratch of Omaha Beach, he is now in. And because the 11-horse High Call was also scratched, he would have gotten in either way. But this horse has not run well at all in his career. And he, like I said, with the Maximum Security, he and Maximum Security ran 1-2 all the way around the track in the Florida Derby. If he can't beat Mayton's, then I don't know how he's going to win this Kentucky Derby. Obviously, the connections are happy to be there, but it would be a shocker of all shockers, in my opinion, if Bodie Express wins this race.
Yeah, same here. I'd be very surprised. Before we do our predictions, let's talk about Omaha Beach really quick. He was obviously the favorite that got scratched. And do you think we're going to see him at all in the Preakness or in the Belmont?
Richard Mandela, his trainer, actually spoke to the media yesterday, and he actually, Omaha Beach actually underwent throat surgery this morning. It was a successful surgery. The connections feel that he actually could be back in training within the next 2-3 weeks. Basically, what he had was a ruptured epiglottis, which can actually affect a horse's breathing. So obviously, you don't want a horse with a bad breathing problem in the Kentucky Derby. So I feel it's disappointing for the connections made the right call. At the end of the day, I don't think we're going to see him in the Preakness or the Belmont. The connections have talked about possibly a summer campaign that could include stops in the races like the Haskell at Monmouth Park, or possibly the Travers Stakes at Saratoga. So we'll definitely see Omaha Beach again, but I feel like we probably won't see him again until somewhere around summertime.
Okay, and how many horses do you think from this field will be in the Preakness and the Belmont?
Well, let's see. There's 19 horses running in here. I won't be surprised if we see, maybe about between 5 to 7 possibly come back in the Preakness. I think it's all going to depend on who wins the Derby. I think that's really what it's going to come down to. Let's say if it's one of the Bob Baffert horses, I feel like you may get like 3 to 5 horses come back. If we get like a long shot, let's say Bodie Express, for example, somehow, some way wins this race. I feel like you're going to see a full 14-horse field come back for the Preakness that day. Or if, plus Upar Fake wins the Derby, you'll likely see a large field come back to the Derby. So I think it's going to really depend on who wins, if it's like a short price favorite, if it's like one of the Bob Baffert horses. But, no, it's racing. If you want to take a shot in the Preakness, your call.
All right, so spoiler alert, my winner does involve a Bob Baffert horse. And so, before I give out my winner, who's your winner?
Looking at this field, I actually looked at this for a while. I'm going to go with Tacitus, the Belmont train, number 8. I think watching him, he has looked really, really good in the mornings. I think he's been getting better with every start. This will be his 3rd start of the year. His first race at Tampa Bay was phenomenal. His second race, he was basically like a bumper car race all the way around, and he still managed to win that race impressively. The only biggest downside, I forgot to mention this with them, the biggest downside to Tacitus is that a horse who has won the Wood Memorial has not won the Derby since 2000. But I think he's a horse that, with his looks, his pedigree, and he's got the best probably trainer-jockey combo in the business. I think he can pull this one off on Saturday.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a shocker to me. My pick, I'm going to go with Roadster. I just like all the things I've read. The comparisons to American Pharoah are very interesting. And I just like the story of the TMZ thing that you shared with us. So I'm going to go with Roadster, and that was my pick even from a few days ago before we did this podcast. So I'm going to go with Roadster. And who's your place?
My place, let's see, where is my place? Here we go. So my place, I'm going to go Tacitus first. I'm going to go with Improbable second. I think Improbable, I think 3rd start off the layoff. I think he will get better. We know he likes the Churchill Down surface. If the track comes up sloppy, I think that will be to his advantage. I think he's got a great jockey on him. Obviously, it's a Bob Baffert. I think he's going very well in the morning, so I think he's got a decent shot to hit the board in the Derby.
Yeah, that's actually my show. My place, I'm going to say, is Game Winner. I like Game Winner a lot, and I think that there's a chance that he actually wins the race. So I'm going to go, as my win place show, I'm going to go 16-15-6, which is obviously Roadster, Game Winner, Improbable. Who's your show?
My show, I'm gonna go long shot. I'm gonna go Code of Honor. I think Code of Honor is gonna get the pace he needs. He's a closer from deep in the pack. Pedigree-wise, I said he should handle the 1.25 miles. I think there should be enough pace in this race where he will be coming late. The fact that he has an outside gate, outside 13 post, I think would be to his advantage. So I'm going to go with Code of Honor third.
Wow, that's a good one. And I think Code of Honor's odds are going to go down. I really do. So, thanks for doing this with me today, Jeff.
What was that?
I said, thanks for doing this with me today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe we'll have you on before the Belmont and see if there's a possible Triple Crown coming or whatnot. Maybe we'll talk about other sports someday too, all right?
Absolutely. I would love to.
All right, thank you very much.